Live from Seoul, I'm Kwon Jang-ho, and it's good to have you with us. In today's show, we talk about the high-level inter-Korean talks that are set to take place next Monday, as well as the possibility of a third summit between President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. We also explore what this could mean towards negotiations between North Korea and the US. All that to come with a guest in the studio later. But first, let's turn to Devin Whiting at the News Center, who has the latest headlines for us. Devin?
Hi, Jung-ho. The latest on the summit this autumn is that it's not necessarily going to happen in Pyongyang, even though that's what the April summit agreement said. According to South Korea's presidential office, other options are open. Some details, including the summit location, could be worked out in those high-level talks on Monday. Shin Se-min with the details.
Potential locations for the summit are not limited to the North Korean capital of Pyongyang, is what the spokesperson for the South Korean presidential office said Friday, while fielding questions about the meeting tentatively scheduled for this fall. The joint declaration from the first summit in April states that the summit should happen in the regime's capital, but the Blue House spokesperson's remarks open up the possibility that the North might suggest other locations. He then tossed a ball to the officials attending next Monday's high-level talks, saying the details of the summit, including the locations the North prefers, will be narrowed down by them. Despite agreeing in April to a Pyongyang summit, President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un went ahead with a surprise meeting in May at the truce village of Panmunjom, but that time on the northern side. As for the third summit date, the spokesman said that'll be sketched out after Monday's talks, commenting that it's too early to discuss the schedule in detail. The top office confirmed that the delegations for Monday, although still being worked out, will include a representative from the Blue House. And while preparing for those talks, the spokesman said the governments of South Korea and the US are in close consultations on issues including the declaration of a formal end to the Korean War. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The U.S. State Department is looking to downplay concerns that communications between Washington and Pyongyang have dried up in recent weeks, saying that the two sides have been talking to each other on an almost daily basis. Our Kan Hyung-woo reports.
The United States and North Korea are talking, quote, virtually every day. U.S. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said on Thursday that Washington and Pyongyang continue to have conversations on a daily basis. She even mentioned the different ways they exchange views, saying conversations are happening by phone, message, and email. Asked if the two sides are planning another high-level gathering in the near future, the spokesperson said there were no meetings nor travel plans to announce at the present time. Her remarks come as U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton said earlier this week that President Trump recently sent a personal letter to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, offering to send Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to Pyongyang again to keep the denuclearization talks going. However, the State Department's latest comments on communication between the U.S. and North Korea come amid rising concerns the denuclearization process has slowed to a snail's pace since the North Korea-U.S. summit in June. Kan Hyung-woo, Arirang News.
The South Korean government has released the results of a probe into what was suspected to be illegal imports of coal from North Korea. It found that, in fact, 7 of the 9 cases did break the law. For more, we go to our Foreign Ministry correspondent, Lee Ji-won, who's on the phone. Ji-won, tell us more about these findings.
Devin, South Korea's Customs Service revealed at a briefing just a few hours ago that North Korean coal and pig iron have been, in fact, illegally brought into the country using forged documentation. 3 South Korean firms were found to have transshipped the North Korean resources at a Russian port and disguised them as Russian goods to illegally bring them into South Korea. In the course of 7 instances between April and October last year, they brought in a total of 35,000 tons of North Korean coal and pig iron, worth some 6.6 billion Korean won, or about $5.8 million US dollars. This is a clear violation of UN Security Council Resolution 2371, which stipulates that North Korea shall not supply, sell, or transfer directly or indirectly coal, iron, and iron ore, and that all UN member states shall prohibit the procurement of such material from the North. The Korea Customs Service said it would press charges against the firms involved. That's it from me for now, but I'll be bringing you more updates later.
All right, thanks for that, Jiwon. We'll be looking forward to it. Now, a delegation from North Korea arrived in Seoul today to take part in football matches this weekend between labor union members from both sides. More than 24 workers from the North will be playing their South Korean counterparts this Saturday at 4 p.m. at World Cup Stadium in front of a crowd expected to number 30,000. There will be 2 matches, each one an hour long. The North Koreans were accompanied by officials, reporters, and referees who, after a press conference this afternoon, will attend a welcoming banquet. The last time North and South Korean workers played each other in football was in 2007. Last year, South Korea's previous conservative leader was removed from office for corruption. Today, President Moon Jae-in said that the government still has a long way to go in winning back the people's trust. At a working lunch Friday, that's what the president told 5 of the most senior officials from the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. Take a listen.
우리 정부는 정부대로 또 국회는 국회대로 사법부는 사법부대로 국민들 신뢰를 되찾기 위해서 해야 될 과제들이 많은 것 같습니다. 이렇게 우리 국민들이 바라는 민주주의의 성숙을 위해서도 함께 이렇게 노력해 나가자라는 그런 당부 말씀을 드리겠습니다.
President Moon then called for the 5 leaders' support in revitalizing the economy as well, which faces multiple challenges. This was the 4th meeting of its kind since the president took office in May last year, and this time it included the newly inaugurated parliamentary speaker Moon Hee-sang, in addition to Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun, Supreme Court Chief Justice Kim Myung-soo, Constitutional Court Chief Justice Lee Jin-sung, and the chair of the National Election Commission, Kwon Soon-il. The government's latest economic report shows the Korean economy is continuing to grow steadily thanks to strong exports, especially semiconductors. But there are some concerns about weak employment figures and growing risks from the U.S.-China trade war. Won Jung-hwan reports.
South Korea's economy has seen steady growth for 9 straight months on the back of a rebound in exports. According to the Ministry of Economy and Finance's monthly Economic Green Book report on Friday, South Korea's outbound shipments jumped 6.2% in July from a year earlier. Exports have been steeply increasing since November 2016, led by a spike in global demand for steel and semiconductors. But while the economy is maintaining its export-led recovery, capital spending and the job market still face sluggish growth. Facility investments dipped 5.9% on months in June, and the number of newly added jobs stayed slightly above 100,000 per month over the past 5 months, keeping the employment rate at just 67%, unchanged from the same period in 2017. The latest economic forecast also highlighted increasing uncertainties stemming from the growing trade spat between the US and China. And experts worry that as those countries are Korea's 2 largest trading partners, the trade spat could hit Korean exports. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines.
It was announced on Thursday that the 2 Koreas will hold high-level talks at the border next Monday. The main agenda, discussing details of a 3rd summit between President Moon Jae-in and the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. It was a surprising development as the 2 leaders had previously agreed to meet in Pyongyang in the fall, but it looks like that summit could now be happening sooner than that. Perhaps it points towards North Korea trying to make progress on negotiations with the US that have stalled in recent weeks. We'll have to wait and see whether South Korea once again can play a role to try and resolve this issue. We'll further discuss this with a guest in the studio later. But first, our Unification Ministry correspondent, Oh Jung-hee, has more details on the announcement.
Could the 3rd Inter-Korean Summit talks be held sooner than expected? At North Korea's request, the 2 sides are holding high-level talks next Monday at Tongil-gak, a building located on the North Korean side of the truce village of Panmunjom. Meeting for the 4th time this year, the main talking point for the delegates this time will be planning the next Inter-Korean Summit.
We'll have a deep discussion with the North Korean side about measures to promote the implementation of the Panmunjom Declaration and about successfully holding inter-Korean summit talks.
The announcement adds weight to the possibility of a third summit between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un happening sooner than initially scheduled. When they met for the first time in April, they agreed President Moon would visit Pyongyang in the fall. But there have been reports recently that Moon and Kim could meet as soon as this month to try to find a breakthrough in the North Korea-US nuclear negotiations, which have slowed down because of differences between the two about formally ending the Korean War. Another major topic at the high-level talks next week, according to Seoul, will be how well the two sides have been implementing the April summit agreement dubbed the Panmunjom Declaration. They'll also talk about promoting inter-Korean exchanges, which could involve events like a concert by North Korean performers and inter-Korean basketball games, this time in Seoul. 오정희, Arirang News.
Now, to further discuss these latest developments, we have with us Dr. Bong Young-sik from the Yonsei Institute for North Korean Studies. It's great to have you back with us again, Professor.
Pleased to be here.
Now, Monday's high-level talks between the two Koreas will be the fourth time this year. But it's the first time that actually North Korea is the one who initiated it. They're the ones who proposed it to South Korea. What do you make of that fact?
Well, the table has been turned. Previously, in the third high-level government-to-government meetings, as you said, that it was South Korean government who took the initiatives to realize the high-level talks with North Korea. But this time, North Korea took the initiative to make it happen. And the purpose of this high-level government third-level talk looks like preparation for the third inter-Korean summit meeting between Chairman Kim Jong-un and the South Korean President Moon Jae-in. That signifies how desperate North Korea is under the continuous pressure of economic sanctions in place and the lack of progress on the front of the easing the tension on the Korean Peninsula, including the official declaration of the end of the Korean War by all related parties, including the United States. So it is another attempt by North Korean authority to have South Korean government interposed between itself and the United States to realize very urgent strategic goals for North Korea.
You talk about North Korea's desperation about wanting these talks. Were you surprised by the fact that North Korea did initiate and that they're showing this sign of desperation?
Well, two interpretations can be made. One is the very positive and optimistic interpretation that, as illustrated very clearly in his New Year's message to the nation on the first day of 2018, Chairman Kim Jong-un declared that this year would be the groundbreaking year for improvement of inter-Korean relations and North Korea becoming strong and prosperous. So from that interpretations, it only makes sense for Kim Jong-un authority to take a lot of aggressive initiatives to advance its strategic goals. On the negative side, another interpretation is that because North Korean authority has been increasingly aware of the immediate danger of regime crisis because of mounting pressure of economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation, it is very desperate to get any daylight to get out of the current crisis. And the best hope for North Korean authority remains the Moon Jae-in government of South Korea. A good example is the unannounced and abruptly held summit meeting, the second summit meeting between Mr. Kim Jong-un, the South Korean, and President Moon Jae-in in May, when there was a kind of a lot of twists and turns prior to the actual realization of the US-DPRK summit meeting in Singapore in June.
When they met in secret like that in May, it did seem to help. At that point as well, there was difficulties between North Korea and the US to arrange their own summit. But it seemed that meeting with Moon Jae-in did help move the process along a bit. Do you think that same kind of breakthrough can happen now?
Same kind of breakthrough can happen now. I have to wait and see. I may sound like like President Donald Trump. Let's wait and see. But my concern is that South Korea's capability to be an objective and trusted mediator or balancer or facilitator, however you name it, has been greatly diminished in the aftermath of the scandals of illegal importation of allegedly the coal produced in North Korea. In order for South Korea to be the reliable facilitator or mediator between North Korea and the United States, South Korea needs to maintain credibility. Here it has to earn the trust not only from one side, but also definitely from both Washington and Pyongyang. But it seems like North Korea has begun to question the capability and the objectivity of the Moon Jae-in government as an initiator or the facilitator between North Korea and the United States. Considering that North Korea has elevated the tones and levels of criticism toward the Moon Jae-in government for its decision not to immediately resume the operation of the Kaesong Industrial Complex or the tour program in the Mountain Kumgang, or speeding up the project to reconnect the railroad systems of both Koreas. But at the same time, the United States seems to increasingly cast doubt on the credibility of the Moon Jae-in government as an objective mediator or the reliable supporter for international sanctions on North Korea for North Korea's proliferation behavior, as illustrated by this coal importation scandals. So without credibility assured by both North Korea and the United States, Moon Jae-in government in the upcoming summit meeting with North Korean leadership for the third time cannot really provide any creative ideas or substantial incentives for North Korea to speed up its process of denuclearization, and whatever suggestions Moon Jae-in government may want to broker or propose to North Korea, it has a big homework to persuade the United States and earn the trust of the Trump administration.
Sure. Just earlier today, on Friday, the South Korean government admitted that they released a statement saying that they found after an investigation that 3 South Korean firms have been trading illegally with North Korean coal and iron ore, motivated by financial reasons, i.e. because it was cheap. Now, this is problematic for Korea because, they are potentially violating United Nations sanctions. But how seriously do you think the US would take this? I mean,
it's very serious because South Korean government may just shift the brunt of the blames and responsibility to the 3 companies motivated by profit making. But as the former national security advisor in the Lee Myung-bak administration, former ambassador and South Korean representative to the 6-party talks, Mr. Chun Young-woo writes in his column to Donghwa Daily News that coals, just like human fingerprints, have unique qualities. So it is very easy for the exporters and the buyers to tell where the coal actually was produced and exported from. So it is a rather facile excuse for the South Korean government that, or the companies who actually bought the coals, that they did not have the full information. Because it was quite, it's not so difficult to tell that it is highly possible that the coal must have been exported by North Korea illegally.
I mean, if it was cheap, there must have been a reason why it was cheap.
Right. So the companies took the risk, although there's a good chance that they might have known that it was illegal in violation of the UN Security Council Resolution 2371, paragraph 8, which stipulates that DPRK shall not supply, sell, or transfer directly or indirectly the coal And all member states shall prohibit themselves from actually purchase those materials, including coal. So it was a clear violation of the UN Security Council Resolution 2371. And although South Korean government may defend itself that it did not know, it was just companies motivated by profits, but still, United States cannot really rely on the South Korean government rigorously and fully supporting and implementing its own measures in support for the existing economic sanctions.
Credibility damaged, it seems. One of the other major topics that if the two leaders do meet, President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, one of the main agendas could be the agreeing on how to go ahead with declaring the end of the Korean War. Now, that's an issue that North Korea has really been pushing for in the last few weeks. But the US have said that we're not going to agree to it unless there's a full denuclearization. What do you think those two can agree on here at this point?
Well, I mean, they can play some games of rhetorics to actually reiterate their joint agreement stipulated in the Panmunjom Declaration on April 27th. So, in effect, both leaders may confirm their joint effort and the common hope to put a formal end to the Korean War, but without endorsement and support by the United States. It cannot be a complete and binding joint declaration. So, without having the United States on board, whatever rhetorical agreements can be signed by both leaders of Korea this time, its effect will not be quite lasting. The effect will be quite limited, because as iterated by National Security Advisor in the White House, Mr. John Bolton, that denuclearization of North Korea must be the absolutely top priority, and it is not time for North Korea to continuously play rhetorics, but take concrete actions. So without change of such a very hardened attitude of the United States, then South Korea's elbow room to maneuver will remain quite limited.
The US State Department revealed on Thursday that they're almost in daily contact with North Korea, and then they added via phone, email, and messages. I mean, first, is that possible? And two, would you have expected that to be the case?
Well, it must be possible as a result of the Singapore summit meeting between President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un. They agreed to maintain reliable and frequent communication channels between the two governments, so that doesn't surprise me. But more important thing is what kind of a content of the message has been delivered from Washington to Pyongyang. If the message from Washington is like demanding North Korea to show very concrete roadmap of denuclearization. One news media of the United States reported that U.S. government demanded Kim Jong-un regime of North Korea to get rid of at least 60 to 70% of the all nuclear warheads it has produced and maintained before the end of this year. Then if the communications between Pyongyang and Washington is to reiterate this demand, then there is no reason for Pyongyang to welcome this communication, although the communication may keep happening.
We'll have to see. One more thing before we quickly go. On September 9th, North Korea celebrates its anniversary, the 70th anniversary of the foundation of its republic. Now, reports have emerged that a military parade is being readied. In the past, these kinds of parades have been a chance for North Korea to show off its nuclear weapons and its nuclear military hardware. But reports say right now it doesn't look like intercontinental ballistic missile launchers are getting readied for it. But do you think it'll be different this time? Do you think, it's still a month away, so a lot can happen in a month. But do you think North Korea will not do anything provocative here?
Well, it's up to the strategic decision of the top leadership in North Korea. But if North Korean military is going to show a new type of or more advanced version of the intercontinental ballistic missile, it'll be equivalent to shooting itself at its feet, because that new ICBM must be on the list of items that has to be dismantled as a part of the agreement, the Singapore summit meeting. So why do you want to undermine your strategic leverage upon the United States by showing off your most advanced weapons in celebration of the 70th anniversary of the National Foundation? So I think it'll be more likely to be rather subdued, but just a reasonable level of the demonstration of armed forces of North Korea.
Perhaps a bit more boring than we're used to for a North Korean military parade.
That's good, boring.
Well, thank you for coming in today and sharing us your thoughts with us.
You're welcome.
That's all from me for this week. I'll be back on Monday, where we will bring you the latest from those high-level inter-Korean talks. Hope you can join us then, and thank you for watching, and hope you have a great weekend. Goodbye.